Hi guys, I'm Katherine and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be my first ever sewing Q&A. If you follow me on Instagram, there was a while ago that when I posted asking for questions from you guys, and you definitely delivered, and these are some really good questions that I think will be applicable to a lot of you watching. We're going to get into how to learn sewing, what are the best eras of historical clothing for breastfeeding, and more, so stay tuned. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump right into the questions. So the first question I got was, is a dress form necessary for sewing? So no, a dress form is definitely not necessary for sewing, but it does help. So basically what I mean by that is if you're first starting sewing, don't feel like you need to go out and just buy, a $500 dress form because you can't sew without it. There's definitely a period of time when you can be sewing and you can be creating beautiful clothing without any dress form. The purpose of a dress form is just to make your life easier, because if you're sewing for yourself and you have a dress form that's roughly the same size as you, then you can try the clothes on your dress form and easily assess what changes need to be made. But again, you don't need one. Just to put it in perspective, I've been sewing clothes for about 5 years now, and I only just got a dress form in the past year, and that was my DIY dress form. So if you want to see the video of exactly how I made my own dress form to my own measurements, then check out that video. Okay, so the next question is a really good question. It's, what are the best eras of clothing for nursing access? So if you're a breastfeeding mother and you want to dress historically, what are the best eras that are most conducive to being able to pull out your breast and breastfeed your baby? So I'm gonna give a big disclaimer at the beginning of my answer to this question, which is that women of all eras of history have breastfed. And so no matter what era of clothing you want to wear, there is a way to breastfeed in it. It might just require sewing a slightly different style of garment from within that period, or just figuring things out, but there's always a way to breastfeed because women have always been breastfeeding. So don't worry too much about it. Even in the Victorian era, when things had super high necks, you could make something with buttons down the front, or you could make a blouse and skirt combination, so you could just pull up the shirt to breastfeed, things like that. But without further ado, I'm going to give my personal opinion of what I think is the era that's best suited to breastfeeding access. Drum roll, please. That era is the 18th century. So the reason I'm going to give this answer is that 18th century clothing is kind of renowned for having quite low necklines. So what that means is that you don't have to undo anything necessarily to be able to breastfeed. You can just kind of pull things out over the neckline and breastfeed your baby, and you don't have to worry about it. And another really cool factor about 18th century clothing that you could incorporate is when they had the kerchief that they would tuck into their low-necked jackets or dresses for daytime wear, and you could really make use of that for breastfeeding because it would instantly give you kind of a nursing cover for covering your top half while you're breastfeeding. So you'd be covered on the bottom from your dress or jacket, and then you'd be covered on the top with your kerchief. So that's a cool idea. Even if you have kind of an 18th century jacket that's been adapted for modern wear, like this one that I'm wearing, you can see the neckline does come up a little bit higher than traditional 18th century jackets, which would be down to here. I made this neckline a little bit higher because this is something I'm wearing day to day in my everyday modern life. But even with this, it's laced at the front. And it starts at the top, so I can easily just loosen up this top lace if I need to breastfeed. Okay, so the next question is a really good one. It's, what are the best resources for learning historical costuming? So right off the bat, personally, I'm going to say that I think the best way to learn historical costuming is to get confident in your own foundational sewing skills as well as your own pattern creation skills. Obviously, the better we are at sewing and knowing how to problem solve and figure things out on our own, the more able we'll be to tackle historical costuming projects. And that is because historical costuming is already a niche area of sewing in general, which means that there might be certain garments we want to create or techniques we want to try for which there are no available patterns and no available instructions. And we need to have an ability to be able to have a picture in our mind of what we want to create, maybe be able to draw a picture of it, and then to be able to take that and create a garment out of it. And so the first step to that is obviously knowing how to create patterns. This could be through pattern drafting or through pattern draping if you have a dress form. And then after you know how to make the pattern, if you have basic foundational sewing skills and an ability to look at the garment you want to create and get an idea of how you would recreate that, then you're pretty much set for being able to do historical costuming. Now, obviously, there are a lot of books out there that can help us with finding patterns or doing certain techniques. Personally, my favorite books are Janet Arnold. That's what initially planted the seed for me in wanting to get into historical costuming, was picking up at the library one day. I was browsing and I found Patterns of Fashion 1 in the library, and I had no idea what this even was, but I opened it up and I saw these beautiful line drawings of these amazing 17th and 18th century dresses and what the pattern pieces looked like. And it was really kind of a mind expanding exercise in looking at the line drawings of what the actual garment looked like and then seeing what the actual pattern pieces looked like. That was really a big learning experience, and it definitely hurt my brain at the time because I wasn't even into sewing at the time. But it just kind of planted a seed in my mind, and I've checked out that same Patterns of Fashion 1 from my local library several times now, and I'm always super fond of that book because that's what got me started on wanting to create historical garments. Another great thing about Janet Arnold books is that not only do they contain the patterns, but she has copious amounts of written notes about the construction details of the dresses, as well as like the details of the trims that were used, all kinds of things like that. Now, when it comes to knowing about pattern creation, I love Metric Pattern Cutting for Women's Wear by Winifred Aldrich, which I've talked about in my pattern drafting video. That's really a great foundation for knowing how to create historical clothing, is just knowing how to draft patterns in general. And even though historical patterns are not the same as modern patterns, if you have a general knowledge of pattern drafting and how to take your body measurements and turn that into a pattern, it's going to be a huge help to you on your sewing journey. Another great book that I have that has gotten me very comfortable with different sewing techniques is called The Sewing Book, and it is by, actually, I forget her name off the top of my head, but I'll just write it on the screen when I get her name. But she's a couture seamstress. She actually creates corsets as well. She's very experienced. She's been doing it for a while. And I really like this book because it breaks down like all the different sewing techniques you might need to know. Like you can just look up, okay, I want to do this type of sleeve, or I want to do this kind of collar. And you turn to that page in the book and it has written directions as well as photos of how to do that particular technique. I also like this book because it kind of gave me a foundation in couture sewing. I remember when I first got this book, my parents actually bought it for me as a Christmas present. I was looking at it and I was like, she does a lot of hand sewing. That seems like a lot of work. I don't want to do it like that. But looking back, it's like, of course, she was just doing like the high quality sewing techniques. Like there's always a way to do everything by machine, but usually it's not going to look as nice as doing the fine finishing details by hand. Corsets and Crinolines by Nora Waugh is a classic that everyone recommends, and I personally can't recommend it enough. It's really been great just for reading material about the history and the views at the time towards these women's fashions, as well as having these patterns that you can scale up for corsets. Another great book is Corsets by Jill Salen. I really love that one. I've used it a lot for the pattern. And of course, Stays and Corsets by Mandy Barrington is a great book for how to draft historical corsets to your own measurements, which has been an invaluable resource to me. When it comes to historical shoes, I'm loving the book Women's Shoes in America. Even if you're not into shoemaking like I am, it can give you a good just overall knowledge of historical costuming. Like let's say you create a costume for the Victorian era, mid-Victorian era, and you want to find shoes that look like that. You can get a good idea of what the shoes should look like from a book like this. Foundations Revealed is a great resource for learning, especially about corsetry. They have a lot of free articles as well as a paid membership where you can access more things. I've never signed up for the paid one yet. It's something I want to do, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But even the free resources have been super helpful to me over the years. Actually, the very first corset I ever made, which was 6 years ago, was drafted from a Foundations Revealed drafting tutorial Finally, YouTube, I think, is a great way just to get comfortable with the idea of historical sewing and to give you encouragement, because usually we're surrounded by people who might not understand our passion for historical clothes, or we might be kind of tempted to tone down our own, our own style desires because of the people around us, and we don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. So I think YouTube can be a great encouragement to see other people just like you who are making historical garments and wearing historical garments. It can just be a really good encouragement. And finally, I'm going to say you should always start with passion and excitement, because where there's a will, there's a way. And if you're excited and passionate about historical sewing in general, or making a specific garment, you will get it done and you will find a way. And I always try to give myself time before starting another project to kind of recharge my battery so I can get really excited about the next thing. Because if you're excited about it, that will show in the work that you create. And finally, I'm just gonna mention that I think to kind of get into historical sewing, you need to be comfortable at doing things your own way and finding your own preferred methods to do things, rather than as a first resort going to other people. Because when you're doing something so niche as historical sewing, there's not always going to be instructions and experts available to you. So you really do just need to lean into your own intuition and lean into the whole get messy, make mistakes philosophy. That's really the best way to learn, not necessarily the most efficient way to learn. Like, obviously it would be nice if we had an experienced historical seamstress living next door to teach us, but most of us don't have access to that. And I really think it's just a good exercise for ourselves to get comfortable in trusting ourselves to figure out how to set in a sleeve, or how to make this historical thing or that historical technique, whatever. Personally, I like to work by first figuring it out on my own, even if it means I make a mistake. And then after I've tried it myself, then I'll go to YouTube, or then I'll go to a book or search online for whatever technique. It's just easier on my brain that way. Maybe it's just the way I personally like to work, but I think it's a good exercise for people to learn how to figure things out on their own. Okay, there was another question on where can I buy corsetry supplies in Europe. Let's see, I personally buy all my corsetry supplies from Farthing Ale's corset making supply. And I really, really love their site. They have pretty much everything you would need to make a corset. They have fast shipping, they're very professional, they have high quality items. And I really trust their quality because they're a company that supplies corset making supplies to theaters that are putting on historical plays, to movies, making historical movies. Like, they're really high quality, top of the line supplier. You can buy in bulk from them too. And as far as I know, they do ship worldwide. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure they ship worldwide. Also, So Curvy, I believe, is in the UK. Vina Cava, I'm not sure how to say it. Vina Cava Design is in Europe. I want to say it's in the UK. I'm not positive on that. Also, I found a website called NeHeleniaPatterns.com, which is in Europe. And Red Threaded also ships worldwide. They sell corset making kits. So if you know exactly what style of corset you want to make, they'll sell a kit with the pattern. Actually, not the pattern, you have to buy the pattern separately, but you can get the kit with the fabric and the boning and the busk that you need. Okay, this is a really great question. How to discreetly wear corsets day to day. This is, a really great one, because I personally love wearing corsets day to day, but it has been a real learning experience, learning how to incorporate it into my modern wardrobe in a way that's not super obvious. Now, right off the bat, I will admit to you that a big part of me becoming comfortable with this was actually just starting this YouTube channel, which kind of opened me up to the world of people like me who like corsets and other people who wear corsets daily, and it kind of upped my confidence to not feel so self-conscious and not always be overanalyzing like, oh, is there a line showing from my corset? Because especially now, like, everyone who knows me in my daily life knows that I wear corsets, whereas before I started my channel, I didn't talk about it with anyone, but now kind of everyone knows, so I don't really care too much if they can tell I'm wearing a corset. But this is still a really great question, and I'm going to dive into it right now. So right off the bat, the most obvious historical solution to this problem of ridges and lines showing through from your corset is a corset cover. Corset cover was basically like a fitted camisole with buttons that only went down to waist level. that women would wear over top of their corsets to camouflage the ridges, and often they would have lace along the top to doubly help camouflage things. So that's a great option if you want to make one, or maybe you can buy one. I've seen a lot of vintage ones for sale on Etsy and stuff. Or you could even just wear a modern tank top, and that would help camouflage things as well. Another solution that's sort of a more modern solution is to wear an underbust corset combined with a wire-free bra. And I think this is a great introduction for people who are just getting into corsetry, because it's one thing wearing a corset, it's another thing, swapping out your bra for an overbust corset. And it can be harder to achieve the right bust shaping with a corset, especially if you're making it yourself. So I think an underbust corset combined with a wire-free bra is a great solution to this, because obviously an underbust corset probably won't show through your clothes unless maybe the bottom might show if it's super long or something. There's also other styles of historical corsets that are probably more conducive to not showing lines. Right off the bat, what's coming to mind is the corsets that have bust gussets, like Regency stays or 1830s corsets, where they have these kind of soft bust gussets that don't have any boning in them. Because for me, I have had issues with corsets having like visible boning, like the top of the boning kind of sticks out right where my bust line is, and that looks kind of awkward. So right off the bat, I'm thinking of those corsets that have a soft bust gusset. And often those corsets will also have a drawstring along the top, so you can kind of pull in the top line so it's not sticking out and creating a ridge. So that seems like a really good option. Also, we have to talk about what your outer wardrobe is when we're talking about visible corsets, because this plays a huge role. If you're a person who likes to wear a lot of fitted stretch t-shirts and jeans, it might be harder for you to incorporate certainly an overbust corset, because a form-fitting stretch t-shirt is not forgiving. It's going to show any lines under there. That's why the t-shirt bra was invented. It was invented to be like a very streamlined, smooth bra that doesn't create any lines and ridges. So how much more would a corset cause lines and ridges under a t-shirt? So if you're a person who likes to wear a lot of t-shirts, you can still wear a corset, but I would say you might want to gravitate towards an underbust corset combined with a wire-free bra. Personally, the solution I have come to is I don't wear a corset cover. I do have one that I've made before, and I plan on making more, but I never wear it because I've gravitated towards a wardrobe that's mostly made up of looser fitting things. So like my two blouses that I made on my linen shirt making video, they're both loose and blousy, and they tuck in, so they don't show any lines whatsoever for the most part, and I really like that. So you can always gradually kind of alter your wardrobe over time to where you don't even require a corset cover. You just kind of have these blousier, loose-fitting tops that hide it, but maybe they tuck in at the waist, so you still get the nice waist shaping features of the corset and the silhouette. Now let's say you have more form-fitting clothes that are made of woven fabric, like I'm thinking of Victorian style bodices where it's like tighter, or certainly 18th century is tighter, as you can see. My wardrobe is definitely a work in progress when it comes to this. Like I have a dress, for example, that I like to wear. It's my maternity 1950s dress. It does tend to show corset lines, so a corset cover would be helpful there, and that's why I want to make more, or find a better style of corset that's less likely to show the lines. I will say that if you're wearing a form-fitting shirt that's made of woven fabric, the higher the neckline, the more likely it is to show lines and for those lines to be very noticeable to the eye. So you just might want to think about that when you're designing necklines for the clothes you like to wear. Don't overlook stays, like 18th century stays, when it comes to a daily corset, especially for under form-fitting things, and especially if the neckline is lower. Like take this as an example. I'm wearing my 18th century stays under here, and I mean, you can see a tiny little bit, but you can't really see anything at all. It's been a really great option for me when I'm wearing form-fitting things to hide ridges. And right off the bat, what's coming to mind is my maternity stays that I made when I was pregnant. They were made directly from a pattern from Jill Salen's Corsets book, and what I really like about them is that they have some horizontal boning that crisscrosses at the top with the vertical boning. And I've read somewhere that the purpose of that was actually to help eliminate visible lines and ridges from the corset, which is definitely true, because in the pair of stays that I'm wearing today, they don't have that, and I have noticed that they do cause more obvious ridges under my clothes. So the next time I'm making 18th century stays, I'm definitely going to add that horizontal boning at the top. Okay guys, I hope you found this Q&A helpful. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. Leave your comments and questions below. If you have any other questions that I didn't cover, or if you have opinions on any of these questions that were asked of me, leave your comments below. The accompanying blog post will be linked in the description, as well as all of my social media accounts. And consider subscribing to my channel and hitting the alarm bell for more historical sewing and shoemaking and corsetry videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!